The night Sarah's mother left, the world seemed to stop breathing. The old clock on the kitchen wall ticked louder than usual, echoing through the small apartment, where a 6-year-old girl sat clutching her stuffed bunny, eyes wide, not yet understanding that the woman who just walked out the door wasn't coming back. The rain outside blurred the city lights into streaks of silver, and every thunderclap felt like the sky was breaking apart. But somewhere in that broken silence, a promise was forming, a promise made not by blood, but by love. If you believe that kindness can heal what life once broke, if you believe in second chances and the power of chosen family, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. For years, Sarah grew up without much warmth. Her mother's choices had left her in the care of people who didn't know how to raise a child with gentleness. She learned early to stay quiet, to make herself small, to never expect anyone to stay. That was until she met Daniel. Daniel wasn't the kind of man who stood out in a crowd. He was quiet, steady, and the type who noticed things most people missed. The scrape on a child's knee, the way someone's smile faltered when they said they were fine. He worked long shifts as a mechanic, his hands rough but his heart impossibly soft. He met Sarah's mother, Lily, at a diner one late evening when her car broke down. She had a tired smile, a little girl asleep in the back seat, and nowhere else to go. Daniel helped fix her car for free. When he saw her struggling to keep her balance between exhaustion and motherhood, he offered her a cup of coffee and a place to sit. One small act of kindness, that's how it all began. A few weeks turned into months, and somehow Daniel became part of their small, fragile world. He wasn't trying to replace anyone. He was just there, bringing groceries, fixing leaky pipes, teaching Sarah how to ride a bike in the empty parking lot on Sunday mornings. He was the kind of man who made people feel safe without ever saying the words. But life rarely lets happiness grow without testing it. Lily had her battles, shadows from the past that Daniel couldn't fix with his hands or his patience. One day she disappeared, leaving behind only a short note that said, "I can't do this anymore." Sarah was 8. She didn't cry that night. She just stood by the window, holding her stuffed bunny, waiting for a car that never came back. Daniel found the note on the kitchen counter. He stood there for a long time, trying to breathe through the ache that filled his chest. He could have called someone. Social services, maybe. But when he turned around and saw Sarah standing there, small and scared, he knew there was no one else coming for her. So he knelt down, looked her in the eyes, and said, "You're not alone anymore." From that day on, Daniel became her whole world. He wasn't perfect. There were nights he stayed up late, figuring out how to make ends meet. There were mornings when Sarah woke to the smell of burnt toast because Daniel still hadn't learned how to cook properly. But every day, he showed up. When she had nightmares, he was there. When she got her first report card and felt proud, he was the one clapping the loudest. He was there for every scraped knee, every tear, every small victory. Years passed, and their bond grew deeper. Sarah never stopped missing her mother, but the emptiness began to fill with laughter, bike rides, and warm dinners at the small kitchen table. Daniel taught her things her real father never would have: the importance of honesty, hard work, and believing that love isn't something you earn, it's something that's given freely. Still, there were moments when the world reminded Sarah that Daniel wasn't her real dad. At school events, other parents whispered, curious about their story. Once, a classmate teased her, saying, "He's not even your father." Sarah ran home in tears. Daniel didn't say much that evening. He just sat beside her, brushed her hair gently, and said, "Being family isn't about sharing a name, it's about sharing your heart." When Sarah turned 13, Daniel surprised her with a pink bicycle. She had outgrown her old one, but he'd noticed how she'd been eyeing bikes in shop windows for months. The morning he gave it to her, she laughed so hard she cried. She rode circles around him, shouting, "You're the best dad ever," and he couldn't answer. His throat was too tight with emotion. Time moved on. Life kept testing them in small and big ways. Daniel lost his job for a few months, and Sarah offered to sell her bicycle to help. He hugged her so tightly that she thought her ribs would crack and whispered, "Never give up what brings you joy. I'll find a way." And he did. By the time Sarah graduated high school, Daniel had grown older. His hair had thinned, his hands carried the marks of years of work, but his smile, her safe place, was still the same. He sat in the audience that day, wearing a slightly too big suit, clapping until his palms stung. When she looked out into the crowd, she didn't see the man who had once just been a stranger. She saw the reason she had made it through everything. But life, as always, had one last test to give. A year later, Daniel fell ill. The doctors said it was serious, but he smiled like he always did, pretending everything would be fine. Sarah stayed by his side every day after her college classes, reading to him, cooking his favorite meals, sometimes just sitting in silence. One evening, as the sunset painted the sky gold, Daniel took her hand and said softly, "You made me a father, Sarah. You gave me the one thing I never thought I'd have, a reason to live for something good." Tears ran down her cheeks and she whispered, "You gave me a life, Daniel. You gave me love." He passed away a few weeks later, peacefully, with a small smile on his face. Sarah found an envelope on his nightstand addressed to her. Inside was a photograph of the two of them from her 10th birthday. She was holding her pink bike, and he had his arm around her. On the back of the photo he had written, "I may not have been your father by blood, but you will always be my daughter by heart." Years later, Sarah stood in her own backyard, watching her little girl wobble on a small pink bicycle, just like the one Daniel had given her. Her husband stood beside her, cheering and clapping, while she whispered to the wind, "She's got your smile, Daniel." She had named her daughter Hope, because that's what Daniel had given her all those years ago when she had nothing but fear and emptiness. And in that moment, as the golden light fell across the yard, she felt him there. Not as a ghost, but as a presence in every heartbeat, every laugh, every moment of love that had grown from the roots he planted. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Every bit of support helps us continue telling stories that remind us what love and humanity truly mean.